Hello folks, welcome to Radio Espial episode 74, in which we covered the disappearance in 2009 of York-based chef Claudia Lawrence. Now, thank you for your channel engagement and support. We're rapidly closing in on the 6,000 subscriber mark now, so we very much appreciate that. Let's get straight into the case summary. Now, Claudia Lawrence is an English woman who was last seen and heard from on the 18th of March 2009 when she was aged 35. Now, she was employed as a chef in the University of York's Goodricke College at the time of her disappearance. Now, her case is one of the most high-profile ones in the UK in recent years, and despite years of effort from her family, friends, and the police who treat her case as a murder, no definite proof has been found of her fate. Extensive searches have been carried out over the years in various places surrounding her home city of York. Investigations have reached as far as Cyprus, none yielding any results or clues as to her whereabouts. Sadly, ill-advised comments from the police about her private life early on in the investigation sabotaged its progress, and the reporting on the case became a media circus. And we've seen this in so many cases. Just a few weeks ago, the Amy Fitzpatrick case, and in this case as well, the victim Claudia Lawrence was lost many times as well along the way. Now, as expected, theories ranging from the credible to the ridiculous have circulated, most with no concrete foundation, and more importantly, none with evidence to support them. Sightings of Claudia Lawrence were reported in different places following her disappearance, including Amsterdam and elsewhere. And just to put it into perspective there, folks, this is an absolutely enormous case. There aren't just rabbit holes to go down, but entire labyrinths here. Now, we're not going to do a media review here, as that would be voluminous. It could go on for weeks, and there's so much nonsense there. It's just we want to get on the facts fairly quickly here now. But we will suggest some links for reliable sources where you can dig in further. Now, we've got a picture there of some of the stuff, for want of a better word, that was put out there about Claudia Lawrence, and we'll get to that in a while there. And it's pretty disturbing, really, considering what happened to this lady and what her family had to endure. But before we go any further, just to reiterate, as always, here at Radio Espial, we're focused on the victims, their families, and the facts. And we're almost invariably highlighting cases involving people who cannot now speak for themselves, and that's the case here. So any comments that engage in victim blaming or lack of respect for Claudia Lawrence or her family will be removed without warning. Our subscribers who are always courteous and respectful in the comments, those who do engage in disrespectful comment making, they should look themselves. As the old proverb says, when you point the finger, you have three more fingers pointing back at you. So please don't let yourself on the channel down. Be respectful in the comments. Thanks, folks. Now, we'll just get into the case background there. Now, Claudia Elizabeth Lawrence was born in Malton on the 27th of February, 1974, to Peter Lawrence, who was born either late 1946 or early 1947, and he passed away in 2021. And his wife, Joan Lawrence, was born the 8th of August, 1943. Now, so she celebrates her birthday today as we record this. Turns 82 today. They married in 1970 and they divorced in 1996. Now, Peter Lawrence, there's Claudia Lawrence with her sister Ali there. Claudia's the younger sister, and Ali was the older sister by 3 years. Peter Lawrence was a prosperous solicitor, respected and liked by Claudia's childhood and adult friends alike. He was described as proper, caring, thoughtful, and worldly, and that certainly comes across when you see him interviewed. And that's Peter Lawrence there, and we've got a photo of him there as well. Now, Joan Lawrence, Claudia's mother, is a member of Malton Town Council, and she served a term as mayor of the town as well. She's also popular and described by one of Claudia's childhood friends as being like everybody's nan. So that's Mrs. Lawrence there. Now, her sister Ali, married name Sims, is 3 years older than her, and Claudia Lawrence enjoyed a comfortable childhood. She was privately educated at the York College for Girls, and she had a lifelong love of animals, and the family kept horses all her life. And you can see her there with the little foal there, young Claudia. Nice photo there as well. Two of her childhood friends, Sophie and Mel, recalled their escapades as fearless, mischievous, tree-climbing rebels, and their occasional visits to A&E as a result of when they came a cropper. They summarised it by saying Mel was the naughty one, Sophie the brainy one, and Claudia the shy one came out when you got to know her. She was recalled as being smiley, full of life, full of fun, and positive by her childhood friends. Now, in terms of geography, Malton's a market town in North Yorkshire, England, just under 18 miles northeast of York. It's nearly halfway along the stretch of the A64 that links York and Scarborough on the coast there. So we just got a little map there to show the broad area. It's a bit bigger than County Cork and Ireland. Say, Yorkshire's been divided up variously over the years, but you can check that out yourself. It's outside the scope of this now. We're just dealing with these areas. Now, York is a fortified city in the Vale of York, beautiful city. Been there many times. It's a lovely city, surrounded by flat land, a beautiful scenic area with high quality fertile farmland. It has a long history, and York was originally a Viking settlement, Jorvik, similar to Waterford and Wexford in Ireland, Waterfjord and Vjord. They're old Viking names there as well. So York was a Viking settlement back at the time when they dominated things. Local sites include the imposing and impressive York Minster, which is the second largest Gothic cathedral in the world after Seville Cathedral, and the castle, which is another tourist attraction. The city also has a university and a racetrack. Now, York's just over 200 miles north of London, about 207 miles, 90 miles south of Newcastle upon Tyne, and about 35 miles from England's east coast on the North Sea there as well. Now, there's just a broad map of York there, and you can see that Hewitt and Acombe are suburbs of York. We'll get to them later. They're important in the time that we're going to talk about. So you can see that on the map there, the two suburbs, Acombe on the left and Hewitt on the right there. Now, in terms of study, after leaving school, Claudia Lawrence attended a local catering college and qualified as a chef. She learned all aspects of catering, and her mother recalled the front of house and behind the scenes, so she knew all the business inside out there. She initially worked at several hotels and restaurants in York, but tired of the unsocial hours. In 2006, she found employment at the University of York's Goodrich College, working as a chef in the canteen in the university's main campus there. Now, the Goodrich College, just a quick aside there on the history of that, Goodrich College is named after the Groningen Dutch-born British astronomer John Goodrich, and he became deaf as a child due to serious illness, but he was noted for his work on variable stars. Now, they're stars whose brightness, as measured from Earth, varies systematically with time. And he worked under the auspices of neighbouring astronomer Edward Pigott. Just incidentally, it was an Irish astronomer, Agnes Mary Clerk from Skibbereen, County Cork, coined the term Cepheid variable over 100 years after Goodrich had done the work on it. Now, Goodrich was a real hotshot. He earned the Copley Medal, the highest honour of the Royal Society, and was indicted as a Fellow of the Royal Society on the 16th of April 1786. But very tragically, he never knew this, as he died 4 days later of pneumonia, aged just 21. So that's Goodrich College, and who's named after John Goodrich. Now, so back to Claudia Lawrence. Now, Claudia Lawrence, she was considered punctual and reliable by her employer. Her colleague David Oxer recalled in the Channel 5 documentary, he recalled her warmly, and the banter they used to have in the kitchen with slagging over the work and so on, and they enjoyed working with her. Now, in 2007, she purchased a terrace cottage on Hewitt Road in the York suburb of Hewitt, situated about 3 miles or 5 kilometres from her place of work. She quickly became a regular in the Nag's Head pub, which is a few doors up from her home, and made friends there. Nag's Head is a very common name for pub. It's like the Prince of Wales. There's loads of Nag's Heads all over the country there, and but this one is in Hewitt anyway. That's her house there, the front of her house. We got a photo of that there as well. Now, she made 2 close friends to her socialising there after she moved into Hewitt. Susie Cooper, who was 10 years older, and Jen King, who was 10 years younger than Claudia, and they were a tight-knit trio of friends there. There's the 3 ladies, Claudia far left, Susie in the middle, and Jen on the right. And Jen worked behind the counter she worked in the bar in the Nag's Head as well. Now, a big aspect of the case here, and that was really, flogged to death in the media, was some of Claudia's relationships. So we're going to address that now. And Claudia had some boyfriends. She remained single most of her adult life and enjoyed socialising. She was reported to have engaged in a series of short-term relationships with men. Some of whom were married or in relationships, and while she was generally discreet about this, they were not always hidden. Now, there was another barmaid, Christina Serbian, who worked in the Nag's Head, spoke about Claudia with warrant, and warts and all as well, so she was objective, I think, about recalling her friend. Now, she was objective in acknowledging her relationships as well, and notes that the Nag's Head lock-ins were just messy affairs, really, with the same 8 to 12 drunk people singing joyously, if out of tune, along to a pub jukebox, spilling drinks on themselves, dancing and being handsy to the extent some social circles are just more handsy with each other generally. Now, I think that paints a very vivid picture that I'm sure we've all seen at some point if you've gone out of a night or been in a lock-in, and there's much more of a ring of truth to it than some of the other reports of, all sorts going on in the Nag's Head upstairs, like bed hopping or people up to all sorts up there. I think what Christina said has more of a ring of truth to it there, so I think it's important we noted that. She also noted that more of Claudia's male relationships were outside of that circle, generally, but that one with a Nag's Head regular, Lee Harwell, did turn sour when his wife found out and it caused the break of his marriage. That's Lee Harwell and his wife Beth Harwell there. So that was a bit messy there, all right, with one of the relationships she had from the circle in the pub. Now, also, Claudia Lawrence had been to Cyprus on holiday several times, and she was believed to be exploring job opportunities there, unconfirmed, but she liked Cyprus and visiting there as well. Now, on the day of her disappearance, the 18th of March, Claudia Lawrence worked her 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. shift in the college and went home. She spoke with both of her parents that evening. She sent a final text message from her mobile phone at 8:23 p.m. and a final incoming text was received at 9:12 p.m. Thereafter, nobody's known to have seen or heard from her. At the time of her disappearance, Claudia Lawrence was described as white, Caucasian, 5'6" or 168 centimeters tall in height, of slim build, with brown hair and brown eyes. She did colour her hair, so you'll see photos with different hair colour. It could be blonde, dark, or dark with highlights in it as well. And her hair was naturally curly, but she always straightened it. Now, subsequently, her disappearance was noticed and reported. It was the following evening, so Thursday, 19th of March, she was scheduled to start. Following morning, she was scheduled to start work at 6 a.m. She did not report for duty at the college, and her manager called her mobile phone number. Although the phone rang, the call was directed to voice messaging. The manager took no further action. She'd arranged to meet her friend Susie Cooper at the Nag's Head that night and did not show up. Cooper could not reach her, and when she still could not make contact the following day, Friday, 20th of March, Susie contacted mutual friends who had not heard from her, so then she notified Peter Lawrence, Claudia's father. Now, Peter Lawrence did socialise a bit with them in the Nag's Head as well, so he knew those friends of Claudia's, so she was able to contact him directly. He entered the house, along with the landlord, George Foreman from the Nag's Head. George was his nickname, his real name was Simon Foreman. Now, we've seen reports where it said it was Susie Cooper and Peter Lawrence, and others that said it was George Foreman and Peter Lawrence. So, anyway, they entered the house, found the house to be normal. The bed was made, and there were unwashed dishes in the kitchen sink, suggesting she had eaten breakfast and set off for work. Her handbag containing her purse, bank cards, and passport was in the house, and the only significant items missing were her mobile phone, a set of hair straighteners, and a rucksack, which she normally used to carry her chef's whites to and from work. Now, in Brittondale, a rucksack can mean just a backpack as well. Oftentimes, when people say rucksack in Ireland, they might think of the big, if you're going off hiking or something. But yeah, rucksack just means a backpack. They're used interchangeably. Indications were that Claudia Lawrence left the house normally to go to work at around 5 a.m. on the morning of the 19th of March, but had never arrived. And that's the working theory with the police as well. So there's a similar bag to what she wore, the Carmore rucksack, and that's the silver phone there. Sometimes people show photos of a black phone, but it was a silver phone like that was what she had at the Samsung. Now, Peter Lawrence reported Claudia missing to the North Yorkshire Police, NYP for short, and he contacted them about 2 p.m. on 20th of March in order to report her as a missing person. They were initially slow to act on the grounds that Claudia Lawrence was not a vulnerable person, and there was no obvious evidence of violence in the home or elsewhere around there. They considered it likely that she would reappear after a few days. However, the police officers, North Yorkshire police officers, checked her route to work and sent out a public request for information. Her family became increasingly insistent, and after 5 weeks, the North Yorkshire police upgraded the inquiry from a missing person to one of suspected murder. Now, just a few words on the case investigation. Now, the original investigation considered various possibilities, including that she had left with a new lover to take up a new job, or merely to take a break. However, as time went on, Claudia's family became increasingly insistent that she would have contacted them had she been able to do so, and the possibility that Claudia Lawrence had left voluntarily was eventually dismissed. Another potential scenario was that she suffered an accident or medical emergency on her way to work, and the route from her home to place of work was checked at an early stage, and no trace of her was found. The possibility then was that that had happened was quickly dismissed. Now, another possibility was that she'd been a victim of a chance encounter with a serial killer, and reports were made of various people behaving strangely in the Hewitt area in the days leading up to her disappearance. These reports were investigated but without conclusive results. And then finally, that she'd been a victim of killing by a person known to her. One critical piece of evidence was that Claudia Lawrence's mobile phone remained switched on until nearly 10 p.m. on the 19th of March, at which time it was deliberately switched off. It was determined that the phone had been connected to a mast in the Hewitt area of York throughout the morning of the 19th of March and up to the point it was switched off. Now, that cell itself was stretched out for several miles. It stretched out for 9 miles or 15 kilometres, and that indicates that the phone did not leave that area, but it's a big area to look at. The only CCTV camera on Claudia Lawrence's most direct route to work was at the Melrose Gate post office, and the recording from the morning of the 19th of March did not show Claudia passing, although that is not critical either because she may have passed out of the camera view. The most direct route to work there, there may be variations there as well, but starting from 46 Ewart Road, then down Melrose Gate there where the post office is, there's Melrose Gate Bridge, and then you've got down to the university and the Goodrich College within it there. Now, the independent crime-fighting charity Crime Stoppers offered a reward of £10,000 to anyone providing information which would lead to the arrest and conviction of any person linked to the disappearance of Claudia Lawrence. North Yorkshire Police received over 1,200 calls offering information. An appeal for help was made by John Sentamu, the Archbishop of York. In early June 2009, a reconstruction of Claudia Lawrence's last movements was featured in an appeal on BBC One's Crime Watch. Also in June, 100 days after his daughter went missing, Peter Lawrence launched a YouTube appeal for information. And in late August 2009, North Yorkshire Police and the Lawrence family used the Whitby Regatta in North Yorkshire to publicise the campaign. In September 2009, North Yorkshire Police revealed that the search for Claudia Lawrence had been extended to Cyprus. Now, Detective Superintendent Ray Galloway stated that Lawrence knew several people who live on the island and that she may have received job offers while there. Galloway also stated that some people who had been interviewed had been reluctant and less than candid when spoken to, and that the team of officers had been sent to Cyprus to interview people whom Claudia Lawrence had met there. It was reported that the last text message received by Claudia Lawrence was from a man that she knew from the island. Later in September, detectives made a search of the area on the University of York campus. In October, North Yorkshire Police revealed that they were looking for the driver of a rusty white van who was seen trying to talk to women on Claudia Lawrence's route to work in the days before she disappeared. On the 24th of March 2010, North Yorkshire Police began searching areas of Heslington and York based on new information received, quote, in the last few days, unquote, around that time in March 2010. On 24th of March 2010, land near the children's play area near a muddy farm track was searched, and on 25th of March, the search was relocated to a field near the university, an area land which is bordered by a playing field and student accommodation. Nothing of significance was discovered. The search at Heslington was later considered to be prompted by Pope's information, unfortunately. Now, just rolling back then a year to what's now in Lawrence's disappearance, Ray Galloway indicated that the probable explanation for Lawrence's disappearance lay in her lifestyle, principally in the complexity and mystery of her relationships with men. And the investigation centred around constructing a so-called rogues gallery of the men she'd been involved with. And we'll take a quick insert now. That's just from that Crime Watch episode in 2009 with Ray Galloway.
I'm joined now by Detective Superintendent Ray Galloway, who's heading up this big investigation. As Claudia's sister said there, it's very difficult to imagine that somebody just vanishes off the face of the earth without a trace. What do you think happened? Well,
it's now 11 weeks since Claudia disappeared. There's been no proof of life. I'm treating this investigation as one of suspected murder.
Now, Ray, there's something you want to talk about tonight that you haven't spoken about in public before. You think it could be the key, that there are areas of Claudia's life that are delicate, to say the least, and definitely complex. Tell us what it is you want to say.
As the investigation has developed, it's apparent that some of Claudia's relationships had an element of complexity and mystery to them. I'm certain that some of those relationships were not known to a family or a friend. I need to know the details of those relationships. In fact, I do know details of some of them, and I would urge anybody that was involved in a relationship with Claudia or knew of one that a friend, a colleague, a neighbour was involved in, please, if they're going to be discreet and if they want to actually enable us to deal with it in a controlled way, in a confidential way, they need to pick up that phone and give the call tonight.
You see, some people might think they're protecting Claudia and they're protecting Claudia's reputation, but it's far, far more important than that, if indeed we are talking here about murder. I mean, you do want to hear from people who even have suspicions about other people. That would be useful to you at this stage.
Absolutely. I'm not here to judge Claudia's relationships, I'm here to investigate them. I need people to share that information with me.
We saw, frankly, I think those images of Claudia's house are quite haunting. It seemed to me to be very tidy. Do you think that she stayed there on the night in question?
The evidence would suggest that she left the following morning.
Okay.
What we don't know is whether she stayed there the previous night or that she was at somewhere else. If people know that information, please share it with me.
All right, I want you just to take people through those key sightings, because they could be very important. The first one was around about 5:35 a.m. We showed it on our reconstruction. Take us through it again, just to remind people of the details.
The first sighting is on Melrose Gate Bridge at 5:35. A gentleman cycling past, and he sees a man in a black hoodie and a cigarette in his left hand.
And what about the second sighting then?
The second sighting, and we don't know it's the same couple.
Right.
And in fact, on neither occasion do we know it's Claudia. But the gentleman driving past and he sees a couple in an argument on University Road. We need to know who that man was.
And that was early on the morning of Thursday, the 19th of March.
Okay, so that was the clip from the June 2009 Crime Watch there. It was considered likely that the killer was a local man known to her. One Sky News journalist stated, Claudia apparently lived a significant part of her life in secret. For a privately educated daughter of a country solicitor, Claudia had some unusual acquaintances, and this remains the only missing persons case where I've been warned off or threatened, not once, but twice. And we'll get back to that last part there again later. Now, there was a contradiction in terms of silence being held, but by the same token, there was still plenty of rumour and gossip locally about what happened. Now, rolling on, so that was it. We had several searches, and then nothing fruitful came up. Rolling on a couple of years, then in 2013, there was a major crime unit review, and in June 2013, North Yorkshire Police announced the £300,000 creation of a new major crime unit, the MCU, and that was set up to ease the burden on day-to-day policing. Based in Harrogate, which is another, which is in Yorkshire as well, the MCU was to be tasked from October 2013 to handle crimes including rape and kidnap and review of cold cases, including the Lawrence case. The MCU subsequently carried out new forensic searches at Claudia Lawrence's home on Hewitt Road, using what were described as advanced techniques not available in 2009. And the MCU found additional fingerprints and a man's DNA on a cigarette end in her car. More on that later. Work surrounding her mobile phone showed from cell site activity that she had spent time in the Acomb area of York in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. On the 5th anniversary of her disappearance, a new appeal was made on Crime Watch, which aired on 19th of March 2014. CCTV footage recovered in 2004, driving along Hewitt Road. Car's brake lights come on as it approaches level with Claudia Lawrence's house. Now, there were some arrests then in 2014, 2015. The new investigation was led by Detective Superintendent Di Mallon, and they made a number of arrests. On 13th of May 2014, 59-year-old Michael Snelling was arrested by the North Yorkshire Police on suspicion of Lawrence's murder. He was known colloquially as Geordie Mick. He lived at Bunham Grove, less than a mile from Claudia Lawrence's home, and had been a colleague of hers at the University of York. The two were reported to be on good friendly terms, and he'd often given her lifts in his car to and from work. Searches were made at this suspect's house in York and his mother's house in North Shields, Tyneside, which is up near Newcastle. He was released on police bail the following day and then released from his bail without charge in November of that year, so that was about 6 months later. In July 2014, North Yorkshire Police arrested 46-year-old Paul Harris, who was the landlord of the Acomb pub, since renamed as the Clockhouse pub in York, on suspicion of perverting the course of justice, and that he was quickly released without charge. He complained that the police had excavated a section of the cellar floor of his pub, and Harris stated that Lawrence had been a customer at this pub in the weeks before her disappearance, and that he had spoken to her, but stated that was his only connection with her. That's the Acomb pub there before it was renamed. At least 4 other arrests were made later, but those concerned were all released and none were charged, and we'll get to that later again. In 2015, police released CCTV footage of an unidentified man walking in Hewitt Place, nearby to the alleyway at the rear of Claudia's home on the 18th of March 2009 at 7:15, and another on the 19th of March 2009 at 5:07 a.m. up to 5:30 a.m. And that's now believed to be local landlord Richard Cartwright, who died the following month, and he's not believed to be a suspect. On the 8th of March 2016, the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS for short, refused to pursue a case submitted by the North Yorkshire Police against 4 men who've been arrested on suspicion of murder, citing lack of evidence. Now, the suspects had all been regular customers at the Nag's Head, and they all denied any involvement in Lawrence's disappearance. So that's Alistair Cooper, Peter Ruan, Shane Ruan, and David Robinson. We'll get to that later. Now, the North Yorkshire Police complained about a lack of cooperation from witnesses. The second investigation then ended having achieved little. We roll on another few years again. In August and September 2021, police engaged in the Lawrence case searched Sand Hutton gravel pits, a wooded area around 8 miles or 13 kilometres northeast of York city centre. The search was reportedly prompted by new evidence, although police did not state what that new evidence was. The land had been used as fishing ponds since 1969. The police drained one of the lakes and then allowed a fingertip examination of the lake's bed. Ground-penetrating radar equipment and cadaver dogs were used in the search. At the end of the search, Detective Wayne Fox, senior investigating officer in the Lawrence case, stated that nothing significant had been found, which is disappointing because they were hopeful about that one. Now, alleged links to other cases, just a one-liner. Murderer Christopher Halliwell has been suggested as a suspect, but unless evidence comes, he's not considered a leading suspect. Now, importantly as well, Claudia's law. Now, Peter Lawrence campaigned for the law to be modified in order to allow the appointment of guardians for the affairs of missing people, as finances of missing persons are particularly problematic for their families. Now, the Guardianship Missing Persons Act 2017 was introduced to Parliament as a private member's bill and came into force in July 2019 to allow the family of a missing person to apply to the court for guardianship of that person's estate 90 days after their disappearance. The new law became popularly known as Claudia's Law. So that's the background, and we'll get into the timeline now, presently, folks. So we'll just welcome Mick in now. Hello, Mick. How are you doing?
Thanks, Brian. This is a fairly complex case. This is not just a run-of-the-mill case where you go, okay, that happened or that probably happened. This is a case with, and by the way, thank you for all your work on the background and summary, because we felt we needed to give that kind of depth of background for this case because it is so complex. And the first point I'll make is every channel and every person that has chased down this case, they've gone down rabbit holes to explore the case, and that's not what we're here to do this evening in exploring this case. There are rabbit holes that you might want to just close off, plug off, and then there are rabbit holes that might be worth just probing a little bit, and you've done extraordinary work to close off some of those rabbit holes and keep the finite and definitive lines of inquiry open. So great work, Brian, on that.
Thanks, Mick.
And this was, you said to me, so just so some of our viewers will, this case probably came on our radar, I think early this year, Brian. Now I know both of us have obviously heard of all of the cases we've long, but we started to look at this case, maybe it started to come up in our casual conversations and mentions in UK cases regularly at the start of the year, January, February, and around, I think it was April, you said to me, Mick, I want to do this case, and I said, okay, take your time, go away with it, and do what you have to do. And this is the result of that. This is just a wild case, and it's one of those cases where you can go one way or you can go the other. And the problem I have with this case is everybody who looks at this case wants to go that way, and in reality the real possibilities and answers are actually the other way. because people want to wrap themselves around with conspiracy theories, and this is the problem where we get into, and Brian mentioned it in his preview to the case, and I'm going to emphasize it again. We are not going to tolerate crap and shit in the comments. If you are a moralist, religious, moral views, and don't like how certain people live their lives, this isn't the channel for you, and this isn't your comment channel. Go somewhere else and moralize somewhere else. This is about a person who lived their life, and this has been the problem with this case and Claudia Lawrence. People, instead of judging the case and what happened, have judged Claudia Lawrence and her lifestyle. And we always say no one deserves to be murdered, whatever their lifestyle and whatever choices they make. And that's my biggest problem with this case, and how people have dealt and run with it. And you were right to mention the lead detective Galloway. He made statements in that Crime Watch appeal, which I'm sure he was genuine and wanted to enhance the case, but he led the line and took people down those rabbit holes, and that was my biggest problem with this case, because it led everybody down the wrong lines. We'll speak about it more, but I'm going to let you go on in the timeline now. But all I'll say now to finish up with is people went down rabbit holes, and there were rabbit holes that were just plugged off, that had no meaning to them, but it excited people to go down those rabbit holes. We showed some of the absolute appalling headlines in tabloid news media that cover this case. And remember, this is a 16-year-old case. That's what that family, Joan, Peter, God rest Peter, he's not with us now, the father, that's what that family had to deal with, and that's what all her friends had to deal with. Yes, I get the pub environment, and we're going to be talking about an awful lot about that more later. Brian, I'm going to let you go on with the timeline, and we'll really get into the meat and potatoes of this case.
Grant. We get into the timeline proper here now. So Monday the 16th of March 2009, this is where we start. Claudia Lawrence spends the night out with an unidentified male friend. Now Tuesday 17th of March 2009, the next day, colleague and fellow chef David Oxer recalls that she looked a bit worse for wear, and she told him she had not had much sleep the night before and she'd been out with a male friend, and things progressed. Now people believe this man was not another man that she'd been thought to be seen regularly for a short while before this as well. Now we've a quick little insert there on that from David Oxer.
A year after the disappearance, David Oxer, her co-worker, remembered something she'd said about that night.
The Tuesday, she looked a bit worse for wear. And I said to her, you look a bit rough this morning. And she says, yeah. And I said, so not get no sleep last night? She said, no, not a lot. She informed me, yeah, she'd been out and she was being with a male friend the evening, and things progressed.
Police believe Claudia had a casual boyfriend at the time she disappeared, but that the man spoken about to David Oxer was someone else.
That same day, Claudia Lawrence puts her car, a blue-green Vauxhall Corsa, we've got a photo there of a similar car there, into a local garage for work to be done on it. Now, we'll come back to that again later. It's not critical, but it's still part of what we need to discuss later as well. The next day, Wednesday, the 18th of March 2009, at 5 a.m., Claudia Lawrence leaves home to walk to work at the University of York. She works her shift there from 6 a.m. through to 2 p.m. in the kitchen at the university. Shortly after 1400 hours, 2 p.m., Claudia departs for home shortly after the end of her shift. Now we have CCTV crossing the campus. We've got a still there, and then we'll add the actual CCTV then. Now she's also captured on CCTV posting a letter on Melrose Gate. The contents and addressee of this letter have never been identified. Presumably, what she was posting was not something official or public sector related. If investigations were conducted on this aspect of this case, because it could have been traced then. Otherwise, nobody else has come forward to say they received any correspondence from her. So that's still unknown what she was posting there. Footage isn't as clear there on that one, but you can still see, you can make out her figure, her hair, and her jeans there, and the way she carries herself from the from that. Now, and that's the last known footage of Claudia Lawrence on Melrose Gate in York. Now, she accepts a lift home then from a work colleague subsequently, and by 1500 hours, 3 o'clock p.m., she has arrived home. The late afternoon, Claudia Lawrence leaves her house and is presumed to have gone shopping. She bumps into a local childminder, Lynn Chapman, who she knows from the Nag's Head, and they converse while walking. They walk as far as a nearby church together, talk about the pub, and Claudia inquires about her husband before the park company. Now, there's a gap then, a couple of hours, and I'm just going to just a quick note there on the period between 8 p.m. and 9:30, so 2000 hours to 21:30. During this period, discussed next, while it's believed that Claudia was still at home, it's not known for certain if this is the case or if she's adjourned somewhere else for her evening wind down. So the general thinking is that she was home, but that's not certain by any means. So 1915, a figure is captured on CCTV on foot turning into Heworth Place from the junction with Heworth Road, a few yards from Claudia's house, emerging again 1 minute later with a bag and pausing when they see another person walking down Heworth Road as they were returning to the same junction again. Now remember, this is March, folks, so 7:15 in the evening, it's dark there. So we've just got the CCTV of that figure there now. Okay, and as you turn right out there, it takes back up past her house there. Okay, now 1927, Claudia speaks with her father, Peter Lawrence, and again tells him that she'll be in bed soon as she has an early start for work the next day. 2023, she speaks by telephone with her mother, Joan Lawrence, and while they're both watching an episode of the television show Location. Now, they're both fans of this long-running British show, which is presented by Kirsty Allsop and Phil Spencer, who tried to find a perfect home for prospective buyers in every episode. She tells her mother that she'll be in bed soon as she has an early start for work the next day, same as what she said to her dad there. Now, at 2025, she sends a text to a friend, and then around 9:30 up to 9:30, there's a white Vauxhall Astra van, still untraced, was parked opposite Claudia's house and is captured by a bus's CCTV. There's a still from that there. It's slightly off axis there. But the van was suspected to be driven by a man who was harassing women in the area at the time. Neither the van nor its driver have been identified. So just a quick CCTV of the van from the bus now. Now, 2112, Claudia's mobile receives a text from a friend in Cyprus, which she does not open to read. And that's the last incoming communication known with Claudia Lawrence. And there's nothing else known beyond this now. 19th of March 2009, note that even though this is spring, timekeeping is still under the winter regime of daylight saving time, DST, And even with DST, sunrise was still not until after 6 a.m. It was another couple of weeks before the clocks go forward. So spring forward, fall back. Now, again, we just put in the route to work there. So down from York Road down through Melrose Gate Bridge, University Way, and onto Goodrich College. Now, Claudia would have left on foot for work this time again. Remember, her car's in the garage, and this is what is believed to have occurred. David Oxer, who we heard from earlier, expressed regret that while he had given her lifts before as he passed her house, that he didn't go past her that morning and offer a lift anyway. And we see this everywhere in cases. Totally understandable, very human reaction there, like that. People always end up turning things over in their heads because they felt if they'd done something different, it might have changed things. Now, 5:07 a.m., a man is seen on CCTV walking around the back of Claudia's house. This man is identified, that's the same junction we discussed earlier. The man is identified as local landlord Richard Cartwright, age 57, who often was in the vicinity at this time as part of his routine. He died 3 weeks after Claudia Lawrence's disappearance on the 9th of April of natural causes. So this is that CCTV now, who's believed to be Richard Cartwright and is not deemed suspect in the case.
5:07 a.m.
This piece of CCTV is from the same camera as the one the night before, near Heworth Place.
Police believe this could be 57-year-old local property landlord Richard Cartwright.
No.
Brian, just on that seat, it should be emphasised that was a walk that Richard did regularly at the same time over and over again. So people might say, oh, hang on a second now. This was a creature of habit. This was a regular thing he did day in, day out. And police did have access to more CCTV than we have, and realised this was something he did every morning and was almost at the same place every morning. And that's why we, in our own analysis, like the police, can discount that Richard had likely nothing to do with this case. Oh, sorry, that's all I wanted to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, nothing hinky there. No, it wasn't. No. Yeah. So that's that 5:07, 0542, a car which was never traced, braked as it passed her home. This was a Ford Focus, silver Ford Focus, and we've just got a quick snippet of CCTV there of the Ford Focus. This from a different angle again, further back, and it shows it going past her home and braking. Okay, I should have mentioned there, folks, just the taillights there were visible. Okay, that car hasn't been traced, and the driver hasn't been identified, obviously, either. No. 5:35, we'll go back a few minutes again. A cyclist sees a man smoking with his left hand and a woman of approximately the same height talking on Melrose Bridge. Some believe that may or may not have been Claudia. 6 a.m, Claudia Lawrence does not show up for work at the canteen in the university. 6:10, a man and a woman, both unidentified, are seen arguing on University Road near her workplace. Again, may have thought this was Claudia. None of these are confirmed, but we're documenting them anyway here. And then 10 o'clock, the shift manager calls Claudia's mobile phone and it rings out. Then later on, Claudia's 12:08, just 4:12:10, Claudia's silver Samsung D900 mobile phone is deliberately switched off by someone who is, to date, unidentified. This deliberate action can be ascertained from the cellular monitoring and data. And note, again, the phone was within a cell that included her home address and areas radially 9 miles out from the mast in the college away as well, or 15 kilometres. So that was an area where the phone had been. Now, there again, we got just a reminder: the Carmore rucksack and the silver mobile phone, and a rucksack just like that, like Claudia's, was seen near a path that Claudia may have walked along on her route to work that morning. This was not retrieved, so the person didn't retrieve it, and it was gone later. Now, in another alleged sighting, strangely, a dog walker named Bev claimed to have seen Carmore rucksack like Claudia's next to a tree stump near the river East at Ingleburg Barrack, nearly 50 miles away, which was a strange observation as well. Now, there's just a picture there of the front, how close Claudia's house was there. It's the fourth, there's the pub, the Nag's Head. It's the fourth door down from there. So that's the with the green door. That's Claudia's house there, just from the front. Now, her friend Susie Cooper was due to meet her for a drink in the Nag's Head at 2000 hours. Cooper shows up, and the mutual friend Jane King is working. Remember the three ladies earlier, you had Claudia, Susie, and Jen. And Jen is working behind the counter in the pub. Claudia does not show up and is uncontactable by phone. Nobody calls down to the house 4 doors away. Now, we can understand people going, well, why did you go down to the house or whatever? But again, you know, in situations, you can't really judge the situation either. People might have thought, oh yeah, maybe they might have wanted to impose, you know, they did either. And, you know, that was between them. So I don't think it's fair to judge completely, you know, either. So they didn't go, and that's it. Now, we move on then to Friday, 20th of March 2009. In the morning, Susie Cooper contacts mutual friends and acquaintances, including the landlord of the Nag's Head, Simon George Foreman, to see if they have heard from Claudia, to no avail. Miss Cooper then telephones Peter Lawrence to come to Hewitt, and using his key, and it was either Susie Cooper or George Foreman, probably George Foreman, entered Claudia's house, depending on the reports. All looks as if she had left for work for the day, breakfast dishes in the sink, slippers by the door, etc. Nothing was really out of place. And as we said before there, yeah, the rucksack, the hair straighteners, and the chef whites were gone, and her passport and cards were left there.
Brian, can I just make a point here? It's just something that I picked up on. Obviously, Friday, March the 20th, you know, something seriously wrong. Claudia's not around. She's missing. Father turns up. George turns up. I not know. Look, I don't want to get into this too much. I know in the area where Claudia bought her house, she owned it. There's talk that she got a little bit of inheritance and help from the family. She ultimately owned the home. She wasn't renting it. That was her home, bought home, and it did. I suppose as we go through the timeline later, it did raise the question to me: who had keys outside of Claudia to this house?
Yeah.
One would think, because, you know, we would do it. Like, I live in the Netherlands. I have a full set of keys to my mum's house in Ireland.
Yeah.
You know, this would be a regular thing. I'm sure you have it in your own family where you have access to your own family home where you grew up. You have keys there just in case we ever need them. And it's an area that I don't think has been properly explored as to Claudia. It's not like she was renting and sharing as such. It was our own home. So to me, it's never been clear who actually had a set of keys to that house.
Because there was talk of George Foreman having it, but again, that wasn't, you know, you weren't certain of that either. If he had a set of keys, then if she checked in with them already, they could have gone down together and before the dad got there. But I don't know. It seems the dad had the keys anyway. But that sound could be unconfirmed. You don't know if that was something that grew legs again. So I deliberately didn't.
Yeah, no, I understand, and that's
it's
only.
Point what you're making,
Yeah, I raised that. Yeah,
I didn't go down the thing with George Foreman, though. You know.
Yeah, I simply raised that because it's a point of who actually had a set of keys for that house, and normally even the house owner, we're all human. We might, I'm going on holidays. I'm going away for the weekend. Can somebody can somebody feed the cat? Can somebody feed the dog? Can somebody just check it? And water, whatever. And we've never been clear who had a set of keys for that house. But anyway, go ahead, go on, Brian.
No, so good point there. So anyway. 1400 hours, Peter Lawrence reports Claudia Lawrence missing to North Yorkshire Police. He speaks with Claudia's older sister, Ali Sims, who alerts their mother, Mrs. Lawrence. It's well known that Peter Lawrence and Joan Lawrence were estranged at this point after their divorce in 1996. So then we have DCI Lucy Pope, childhood friend of Claudia's, initially reached out to Mrs. Lawrence and was initially put in charge of the investigation, with Detective Superintendent Ray Galloway taking over as senior officer and retaining Pope for his assistance subsequently. There seemed to be something around conflict of interest and so on there, but I mean, she was retained as assisting Galloway later, so I don't know if that was a sort of something that was blown out of proportion or not, or what, but either way, that's where it went. Galloway was in charge afterwards anyway. Then, I mean, I didn't document this again. We had already. There was various searches went on. Some were fruitless, but just in 2010 we had the Heslington search, which was thought to be a hoax and so on there. So there was various searches in there that we talked about earlier. But so really, there was very little happening in the investigation for the subsequent 4 years. Just some searches like that didn't yield anything. Now, 2013, the Major Crime Review was launched, and as part of that, going into 2014. 13th of May 2014, Michael Geordie Mick Snelling, a 59-year-old man, up to November, and that was 6 months later. His home in Bonham Grove and his mother's home in North Shields, which is, remember now, Newcastle, 90 miles north. So you have North Shields and South Shields either side of the Tyne there, north and south of them. So North Shields are both searched. Now, July 2015. This is after Snelling's been released from bail. 46-year-old Paul Harris, landlord of the pub The Acom, is arrested and later released, and without charge. Then we just in 2015 also we have Alistair Cooper. Sorry, that was a misprint there. That's July 2014. Apologies, folks. Right. No, Alistair Cooper is arrested and accused of murdering Claudia Lawrence. He's released on bail the following day, and a home is searched in connection with this line of inquiry. No, that's Alistair Cooper there. He was involved in the running the Nad's Head there as well. A month later, 22nd of April 2015, brothers Pete and Shane Ruan, aged 55 and 52, and Shane Ruan's brother-in-law, David Robertson, are arrested. That's David Robertson there as well, and accused of murdering Claudia Lawrence, and they were released on bail the following day. And as we see before, the two brothers, maybe it was genuine, but you can hazard a guess what the two brothers did when they were questioned, Mick. So they
alibis. Where we heard that before in a recent case. And the McCarrick case, alibis, brothers, blood runs thicker than water.
Yeah, and there's a brother-in-law in the mix there as well. So 17th of September, a file for the 4 arrests that we just mentioned there was submitted to the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, but by the 8th of March 2016. So this is a long process. We're a year on from the initial arrest there. Now, the CPS decides that the 4 men for whom the aforementioned file was submitted will not face charges in respect of Claudia Lawrence's murder. So obviously the evidence wasn't strong enough there. And 17th of January 2017, sadly, the police scaled down the investigation, and this was Mr. Lawrence explicitly said this was very depressing for him at that time to hear that, and it always is for families, July 2019, if there is any sort of an upside to it, Claudia's law has passed enabling guardians of missing persons affairs to be appointed. And that was from Mr. Lawrence's perseverance there as well. Now, on the 11th of February 2021, Peter Lawrence passed away peacefully in St. Leonard's Hospice after a short illness, without ever knowing what happened to his daughter, Claudia. And he received no OBE along the way as well for his work. Now, on the 24th of August 2021, 10 miles from Claudia Lawrence's home, and that there from ITV News at the time. And just looking at that, remember now, folks, this was a fingertip search. They drained out a lake, so you're talking about length, breadth, and height, and looking at the things that meticulous fingertip search at the bottom of that. That's no mean task. That's a big undertaking there. We've seen that in other things there as well. But just it might look small in the picture there, but there's a lot of work involved in that. So we just have a quick insert from ITV News on that now.
What happened to Claudia Lawrence has confounded police for more than a decade. Today, a new search hoping to unearth hidden clues. Does this remote woodland on the site of a former gravel pit hold the key to finding answers for her family?
It's been the not knowing all along, and it's been carrying on as though everything's normal when it isn't. My lifestyle and what I'm involved in, and people say, will you come to this, will you come to that, will you do this, that and the other, and you put a good face on, but inside it's very different.
Claudia was last seen leaving work. That evening she called her parents, but she hasn't been heard from since. 2 investigations into her disappearance and suspected murder have led to 9 people being questioned. Earlier this year, Claudia's father Peter died without finding out what happened to his daughter. Police won't say what brought them here today, but there's long been a suspicion that some people do know what happened to Claudia Lawrence. The search in that woodland feels like a significant development, but so far, one that only adds to the mystery.
And as we said, there was nothing retrieved from the gravel pits, neither Claudia's remains nor any new evidence is found. And that was a line of inquiry they were quite hopeful about earlier on, but unfortunately yielded nothing. Now, we move on another couple of years again. There was a new podcast, Answers for Claudia, by journalist Tom McDermott, a reporter who was born and raised in York. And it's a 10-part podcast from the 1st of May through to the 19th of March, 1st of May 2024 to the 19th of March 2025, so the 15th to 16th anniversaries. Now,
Brian, we'll obviously put the links in the description for that podcast. Yeah,
definitely worth listening to. It's an informative podcast there, and you can check that out. Now, the February 2025, the above podcast, this shares that Tom McDermott and Mrs. Lawrence discover a loft accessible from the wardrobe in Claudia Lawrence's home that had been missed previously, because it was actually went into the wardrobe and it was overhead, so it was easy enough to miss it. There was wine and cider bottles that weren't examined properly, and the contents of one of Claudia's jackets that were not examined previously. There was some tissues and old chewing gum in there, so they were missed in the original investigation there. And Mrs. Lawrence states that the house was broken into twice following the podcast, so that's quite telling there that people are still watching this, and locally as well. We'll have another word on Tom McDermott. He was trying to be an acquaintance of his, tried to dissuade him on investigating this as well. So we'll get to this in a minute. We'll go on to the conclusion discussion now. That's the end of the timeline there, folks. So I know it gets sparse for parts there after 2009. It's pretty sparse for viewers. There's some activity, sparse again, and ultimately there's been no sign of Claudia since that March, since the 18th, 19th of March 2009 still, and now we're 16 and a half years on. So, Mick, any thoughts before we go into the conclusion?
No, and you're right. Like there's a point where sometimes in a case we like to, if we can, start the timeline just before kind of like disappearance or incident as far back as we can, because sometimes it gives context. It's not always practical because we don't have the details, because of course a case comes to light and information comes to light only when somebody disappears or goes off the radar. And equally, cases, whether we like it or not, and just like so many cases we've seen, you know, whether they happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you tend to find, and in this case 2009, you do tend to find when you hit the 5 to 10 year mark, you know, and you look back on significant, important developments in a case, it stops being yearly, it becomes every few years, and then all of a sudden it's maybe only something happens once every 5 years. And I think that's where this case really is. I think after I always feel the momentum and impetus. I think Peter, after Claudia's Law and Peter passed away, it was in 2021.
Yeah.
I feel that the case over the last 4 to 5 years has lost that impetus, and it's kind of, we haven't really heard an awful lot about this case.
As you've seen here now, this case is very complicated to begin with, namely due to, but not just limited to, no body, no crime scene, no forensics, no evidence there for any of that, different perceptions of Claudia Lawrence, disconnections between people who know her, and lack of action on tracking what happened immediately pre and post her disappearance. Now, the way the investigation was conducted and the subsequent media fallout, and the effect that this had on the investigation as well. Now, the crucial periods of 48 hours before and after her disappearance were largely, but not, I mean, you could look at even further either side either, because there was so, it's so complicated, and there's such a, you know, there's a lot of people, a lot of players in there as well that, you know, to look at. But anyway, we look at the crucial periods of 48 hours before and after are the most important there anyway. So let's just boil the facts right down. And Claudia's last phone communications were text outwards around 20:45, and that was her last her last communication, and then inwards at 21:15 around then. Her phone was deliberately switched off in an area under the cell of her mobile networks around 12:10 p.m. on Thursday the 19th of March, and that area covered her home area and a few miles radius outwards from there. So it wasn't taking her handbag, which contained her purse, bank cards, and passport. Her mobile phone was missing from the house, as were her hair straighteners, her chef's whites, and the Carmore rucksack that she usually carried them in there when she went to work.
Brian, can I just say something on the mobile phone, just so, because we always say this, it's so important. Please, people, put yourself back in the time 2009. I know people say, it's not that long ago, but technology wise it actually is. 2009, we say, when we talk about cases back in the mid 1990s, even late 1990s, we emphasize, hey, not everybody had a mobile phone. We're not talking about that, but what we're now saying is, yes, people had mobile phones in 2009. They weren't the most sophisticated things. People in 2009 did not have what we call smartphones now, GPS, apps where you're literally interacting with the world as you move along. We didn't have that, so please bear that in mind. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
So that's true there. Now, before we go any further, right, again, let's be clear about Claudia Lawrence's love life or sex life or whatever you want to call it. So Claudia Lawrence was not monogamous. So what? Right? Neither would the men she allegedly was intimate with, and it takes two to tango. So we're not here to judge on vague, non-specific allegations or anything. Let's focus on the facts and remember that investigations are to aid the victim, not destroy her character. As Mick said about let's get by religious grounds, let he or she who is without sin cast the first stone. Okay, we're not interested in that. So let's be very clear on that. And here's one thing I just want to say as well. All of Claudia Lawrence's friends and family, whether they were privy to these parts of her private life or not, cared deeply for her and were devastated by her disappearance. And that says a lot about her as a person. And she stayed on good terms with a lot of her exes and so on there as well. So that all be bear in mind, and that says a lot about Claudia Lawrence and how popular and well loved she was. Now, as just a quick one-liner, I can't understand why people are so interested in other people's love lives or sex lives. You know, these relationships may be relevant, but we've no interest in the intimate details of them. They're irrelevant. So please don't let yourself down by posting inflammatory or victim-blaming comments or naming names where we don't name names. As you said before, reasons for that. And such comments will be treated with the contempt they deserve and be deleted. Okay? So we're here for Claudia Lawrence. She's the priority here. And one sad thought we often have with such cases here, imagine if the media actually put all of the effort they put into the salacious stuff into actually trying to establish facts for the victim. It would be so much better for everybody. Maybe I'm being naive, but anyway, it would be. Okay, Ray Galloway, I think, being blunt, failed to do overall basics as a senior investigative officer to understand, police to public communication. He didn't consider, that communication is a two-way process. He didn't consider what people would hear when he spoke on that infamous crime call episode. And what is pertinent, though, is the number of men who were arrested, at least 6 there. Now, I think there was and just think there during the research, we learned that up to 9 arrests and detainments in the UK and abroad, some which were not reported by the media as well. So
we have become aware, regardless of what the media had reported in cases as regards the arrest, the official so-called 6 people, we are aware that there were more discreet arrests that were not publicly known and reported in the media, and we believe there were at least 9 arrests in this case. That's all we'll say about that. We're not naming other people.
Yeah, so that's it. And I think and unfortunately, I don't think they've really learned much from this, because the Nicola Bully case was a similar thing where intimate stuff was thrown out there about her when it shouldn't have been, and different cases I know, but I just thought of Claudia Lawrence immediately when that happened with Nicola Bully, a few years back. Anyway, and don't get me wrong, I mean, Ray Galloway's job is incredibly difficult. I don't know how, if you're put over a case like this, it must be, the amount of work is phenomenal. You have to work these cases the hard way. I mean, imagine going, looking at, say, the Nag's Head on its own, just one place. Imagine saying, I want to know everybody who came in there the week before, the week after, want to know what they drank, what they smoked, every bathroom break they had. You want to know everything about everybody that was in there. And imagine trying to take all that data and boil that down and dissect it and pick out what's going on in there and coordinate all of that. And then that's just one section. Then you'd have to look at all the other areas as well. So being a senior investigating officer of these things sounds like a nightmare, So, but that's the background to that. But look, I think the communications could have been a lot better there. Now, certain things in this case are complete nonsense, including much of the sensationalization, which we will not go into. The notion of the left-handed smoker is a very loaded term and should not be used really. I think just because someone sees a cigarette in his left hand doesn't mean he's left-handed. I mean, I remember a few years ago, my late grandmother smoked. She'd be sitting in the corner. She was left-handed. She smoked fag with her left hand. The ashtray was in her right hand. When she was smoking with her left hand, she held it that way. When she smoked with her right hand, she held it that way. And then, so she'd have her ashtray and her bookshelf here. She had her table for her crossword knitting and cards here. And then she generally smoked that way, and she put in the ashtray with the other hand. There's no pattern here, is what I'm saying.
As a smoker, Brian, this is the very first. Now, I can be corrected, because no, Mick, you didn't hear about this case or that case. This is the first case, and by God, we've done an awful lot of cases, hundreds of cases. This is the first case I have ever heard this term, a left-handed smoker. I don't even know what the hell that is.
It's madness.
I smoke in my left hand, I smoke in my right hand. It depends on what I'm doing, or occasions, or whatever. Or I'm not even thinking that somebody in a pub or in the street might look at me and go, oh, he's a right-handed smoker, he's a left-hand. I don't even know what the fuck that means. It's just nonsense.
Total nonsense.
I get it that a witness might say he or she was smoking a cigarette, they had it in their left hand. But even in that earlier witness description that you mentioned, I have never in a witness statement heard, okay, that person I saw, they had a cigarette, and if the detective asked them, what hand was he holding it in, they go, what? I can't remember. I have never heard a witness description mention which hand they were holding a cigarette in. I have heard witness statements where a gun was pointed at somebody and they were asked what hand were they holding it in. Yes, but never a cigarette. But look, that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I'm saying on that. Okay, go ahead, Brian.
It actually gets worse, Mick.
It does.
On one YouTube video, they even said you could tell by DNA on the cigarette butt that the smoker was left-handed, which is absolutely, no, I've heard everything. Like,
I've heard it all now. Yeah,
I know, absolute barmy stuff. So anyway,
yeah. Sorry, Brian. Go on.
We'll move on to that one.
Yeah, one more. Yeah.
So anyway, the two open questions, which are very pertinent for me now. I think, first of all, back to the cigarette butt, and we're not talking about handed anymore, which DNA was lifted from it. Just given the car was in the local garage at the time Claudia went missing, were all of the staff in the garage or those connected to it eliminated? Because generally it's said that those close to Claudia were eliminated, but her family said she hated smoking as well, so it seems unlikely she would have left a cigarette butt had a cigarette butt in the car or allowed someone to smoke therein either. So I guess the other thing then is evidence handling, because either way, if this was discovered, then it loses at least some significant as evidence tying its smoker directly to Claudia, because the car being in the garage after her, she handed it over. And I suppose this could be just an aside there, but given this was after the 2007, the workplace smoking ban came in 2007 in the UK, it was 2004 in Ireland. The smoking ban came in, it could have prevented somebody coming forward if they thought their job was under threat, if one of the guys working it was smoking in the garage and he shouldn't have been or something. Perhaps that's just a suggestion. But either way, I think, I'd be interested to know where the staff in the garage eliminated from that. And the other question I had then was, I suppose we said many times the 48 hours before and after a person disappears are vital. No, we can't be sure Claudia was with her phone during those times, but she probably was. Her friends and family said she always had it with her anyway. And in relation to Claudia's phone, was any of the mobile location data narrowed down? Now, I know the police might want to keep some of that in their back pocket, but it would be very beneficial to know this information, namely to possibly ascertain, and bearing in mind what Mick said earlier as well, things weren't as advanced then in terms of tracking, but to be good to possibly ascertain her whereabouts on her night out on the 16th to 17th of March, and any movements in the 15 to 16 hours between her last communications and switching off the phone on the day she didn't show up for work. Now, given they traced the information prior to her disappearance, perhaps this is why they assume she did leave for work as per usual routine when commuting on foot to the college at 5 a.m. because the phone stayed within that cell. Beyond that, we're left then with the 5 possible broad scenarios. I'm just going to elaborate slightly on this, and we're going to discuss what's the most likely scenario. Now, there's several theories on this, in fact, and a lot of them are absolutely off the wall. I mean, truth can be stranger than fiction frequently, but some of the extreme theories are ridiculous, and we're not going to delve into those here, so we're going to keep them as sane as possible here. Now, there was little indication that Claudia Lawrence had an insatiable desire to escape her life in March 2009. All her life, she was close to both her parents. even after the divorce, and they were loving and supportive. She had a good, steady job to which she was dedicated, as you can see, getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning to walk to work, or being in for 6 and working shift 6 to 2 and so on. She was dedicated to her job. She was good at it, and good repartee with her colleagues. She was financially secure with her own house, and income that allowed. And she had a good social circle with close friends who loved her, as well as a convenient local in the Nag's Head, where they obviously had good fun there, and she was actively dating as well. So to vanish voluntarily would require very single-minded planning and execution, and most of all, it would involve help and a lot of it as well, I think. And the theory that she went to Cyprus to start a new life there doesn't stack up really. She had friends there, true, but given that there would be British people visiting there regularly and probably a wider circle of friends, she'd be bound to be spotted fairly quickly. And, apart from suggestions of her working in a bar with catering experience, there were also suggestions of her pursuing work with horses there. Now, given the rugged landscape in Cyprus compared to the noticeably flat, lush land around York, and the fact that she had all the resources to start working with horses in York, the family had horses from when she was a young age, and she owned the horses herself. Again, this seemed to be a very unlikely scenario. Also, if she wanted to go into that business, particularly for herself, she would have to build up contacts all over again over in Cyprus, if there was even as much of a horse industry there. Now, there was a reported sighting of her in Amsterdam, and another theory was that she was sex trafficked. Now, again, this doesn't sound plausible, as she was not the right demographic for abduction and such trafficking. Now, she was 35 years old, and even though she was a very attractive woman, generally those abducted for this purpose will be 15 to 20 years younger. Out of Britain in a van seems absurd. She did not need to do that, and even if she did, she would still have probably brought her passport to ease the transition if plans had to change. Passport was left in the house, remember. So again, there was no need for any of this cloak and dagger stuff if she was going to leave, No, that's do you want to come in with any thought on that, Mick? Or
other than to reiterate the point that you've just said, yeah, we get this. We had it with the Amy case. Okay, maybe Amy was sex trafficked out of it. Okay, I get it. I can even comprehend that. She's 15 years of age, impressionable, taken away. Oh, okay, fair enough. It can't be a possibility. Claudia Lawrence was a mature 35-year-old. People that are sex trafficked are not 35 years of age. That isn't the demographic. Claudia owned her own home, was settled, had a very tight-knit group of friends, regularly connected. She wasn't some hobo drifting in it, which is what you get in sex traffic trade and people that are preyed upon. She would be the most unlikely person to be involved in that. And that's all I'm going to say about that crazy theory.
Yeah, because it's mental as well as physical, Mick, because at her age, 35, teenagers, the coercion wouldn't work as well on somebody that age anyway,
Yeah.
So
and not only that, because Claudia was so settled.
Yeah.
Now, okay, we can argue that 24, 48 hours, but boom, you're missed. You're missed within 24 hours. Didn't turn up at work, meant to meet me the following day, wasn't there, something's wrong. That ain't sex trafficking, that ain't that scenario. Boys and girls watching, if you really believe that and you're into that conspiracy theory, again, you're in the wrong channel. You just up the wrong rabbit hole, or down the wrong rabbit hole. Go on, Brian.
Yeah, these people are predators and they select their prey, and that's it. So, and she's not the demographic. So we leave that there. Second option, she was abducted and is being held against her will. Now, I know her mother did believe this, we respect this for a time, but when you consider the practicalities of this scenario, it seems highly unlikely. And just putting it bluntly, remember, to keep a person alive and reasonably healthy, they'd have to be looked after and kept in reasonable conditions, and let alone for 15, 16 years. So, putting it coldly and bluntly, they would need to be kept clothed, fed, hydrated, as well as have facility to sleep, bathe, urinate, defecate at very minimum. Even after a relatively small period of time, or of weeks or months, this scenario will become increasingly difficult and costly to manage and maintain. If you want to keep disease at bay, you have to, look after the person. It's not going to work in any long term, and there'll be an awful lot of work involved wherever it is. So I think that can be discounted. Personally, what do you think, Mick?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm trying to think of cases.
Was the Joseph Fritzl, but that was a child as well, and then there was the other one in
but not even that, just even similar, just generally cases like that. When an abduction takes place, usually, more often than not always, but more commonly, people are picked up from their locale community, should we say, by somebody they might trust, whether they know them or not, and the abduction takes place and removes them from that locale because the predator doesn't want to alert themselves within that locality, so they must remove them and that person away as far as possible to do whatever they intend to do from that locale. Claudia is a bird of a feather. She is absolutely thoroughly enthralled and a local.
Home bird.
She is a home bird, and she is the last person. Now, of course, a random predator passing through. You talked about Halliwell, isn't Christopher?
Yeah.
That was another scenario. This ain't that case. Please understand, that's not this case. And we're going to talk a little bit more as Brian goes on in his conclusions about that. Brian, continue.
Yeah. So another option then, should an accident has been found or has been concealed. Now, that can't be entirely ruled out. I mean, but it's unlikely, very unlikely that she'd been at home and would have been walking familiar route as well. So, I think it's highly unlikely. It can't be ruled out, but I think very, very unlikely. Now, another option, she committed suicide and her remains have not been found. Again, can't be entirely ruled out whenever it's full knowledge of one's mental state. But again, just back to the same as the first point, it's highly unlikely some of her family or friends would have highlighted any red flags or suggested this outcome. And as I said, she seemed to be enjoying life anyway. So I think that one can be, almost ruled out, not entirely. And then the fifth option, which I think is the real scenario. Well, it's a number of scenarios really. She met with foul play and was killed accidentally or deliberately, or dismemberment and disposal. Now, this scenario throws up 4 possibilities with 2 variations in the latter 2 scenarios for obvious reasons that we've discussed already. Okay. Now, number 1, a random attack and killing by somebody not known to her. A planned attack by someone killing someone not known to her. An unplanned attack by a person or persons known to her. And a planned murder by a person or persons known to her. Now, let's get this out of the way first of all now. We've already touched on this, but let's get this out of the way. Murderer Christopher Halliwell has been proposed as a suspect, and he had loose Yorkshire connections. His father, who died several years before Claudia Lawrence's disappearance, lived in Huddersfield, 50 miles away from York. Right? Police do not believe he left the Swindon area at the time. That's where he lived and worked, but are still open to any concrete witness reports supporting stuff. This isn't. I don't think that this is a viable line. There's other far stronger lines of inquiry on this one. What do you think, Mick?
As I said, I'll give my final thoughts, obviously, as we come up to that very shortly. Is this murder, which is how it's classified as, Claudia Lawrence, some person, be they a drifter, a salesman travelling in a car, a truck driver passing through that just randomly is a predator, a natural predator with a past, coming through and identifying vulnerable women and picking them up and doing away with them somewhere else. No, there's nothing about this case that suggests that. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, true. And I think just a couple of points here, and we touched on this already. I think the silence, that's been the biggest obstacle in investigating this case from the start, is very telling. And this is compounded by the police's collective behaviour in cementing that silence. I mean, you know, they tough job, as they said, but it's their job to do. And they went in like a bull in a china shop and some things there. So, you know, alienated people pretty quickly. The comments about Claudia and on the Crime Watch show, they treated some of the people pretty shabbily. I mean, Jen King talked about, you know, basically they went in and they tossed everything in their home. She said, you know, when they stop looking at you as a suspect or whatever, then there's no letter of apology, or they don't send a cleaning team around to sort out your house after they've trashed it. Like, so, you know, there was things like that. So I think they alienated a lot of people there that they could have used to better advantage to get the information. They could have kind of gone in and got people to work with them rather than against them. Maybe it would have worked, maybe it wouldn't. But either way, I think there was a heavy-handedness there. That the news guy said he was warned off twice. I mean, podcaster McDermott there, who did the
Donald, was it McDermott or Donald McIntyre?
Donald
McIntyre, yeah.
No, Donald McIntyre did a program on it about 10 years ago. I talked about Tom McDermott.
Tom McDermott, yeah, the podcast we are going to link to in the description, yeah.
Yeah. So I think what happened, the interactions he had, I think were very significant, and I think it indicates more than silence or collusion. There's fear there, and he was warned off it by, he reached out to a mutual friend and asked about it. You can hear about it in the podcast. He asked about the case, and he said he was going to do a podcast series on it and so on. And the guy just the guy said no way. He said, "Don't do this. I'm going to cut you off completely," which he did afterwards. If he went ahead with it, so there was fear there, and I think that's very telling. Namely, that those dissuading any investigations have solid theories about, number one, what happened to Claudia, and number two, who was responsible for her disappearance. Now, I think the poor police communications not only reduced sympathy for Claudia from some people, it also alienated the people, not just those who may have felt responsible, but those who could have, you know, put to come forward. And with this lack of credibility, how could those potential witnesses expect protection, having watched how this was so badly handled and so publicly as well? You know, how could you? I think there was a certain damage to credibility there. So, you know, why were people going to come forward? They were more scared of the people who they knew had done things than otherwise. So I think, you know, just boiling this down, I think in conclusion, I believe the answer to this lies locally, specifically in York itself, and within one of two localities and communities there. There's the Acomb angle, and then there's the Heworth angle. I'd be leaning towards the Heworth angle, but I think again, the barmaid Christina did say that she thought Claudia had known two men out in Acomb, and one of them was it was next that she was thinking of getting back with. So there's a few different angles, but I think I'd be leaning towards more the Heworth side of things. The most likely, and her body was disposed of. Now, whether it was with one or more people, it's open to conjecture as well. But I think, you know, the level of fear that's there, you know, that's also a factor that could you know, that's telling there as well. But again, there's no evidence to go on now, so I think that's but I think that looks like the most likely scenario out of all the scenarios there. So, Mick, any final thoughts there?
Of all the people, and there are a lot of moving parts in this case, you know, the two guys that own the establishment, the Nag's Head, And yeah, people will say, oh, the Nag's Head, where have I heard that name? Yeah, you will have heard it in Only Fools and Horses, the comedy show. There are hundreds of pubs in the UK called the Nag's Head, but predominantly what those pubs profess and are about is community. And that's where Claudia Lawrence was embedded. And again, no judgments. I think we looked at this street on Google Maps, and I counted it. I can't, because obviously we look in Google Maps and we have to look at the historic images as well as the recent. It is literally, I think it's 4 to 6 doors. It's literally, you could walk out of the Nag's Head and walk to Claudia's house on a slow walk and be there in 30 or 45 seconds. It's literally that close. Now, the most honest account, and I want to make this clear that for reasons we didn't show all of this on the timeline, and Brian represented as much as he could of it that we felt was necessary. I felt that Claudia's friend, the barmaid, Christine, I think it was,
Christina,
provided us with the most honest summation of this case, not just in what she knew of Claudia, but also of the interactions in the time she was a barmaid in the Nag's Head. And yes, you can say, well, hang on, Mick, Brian, she wasn't there for the last 6 months, but Claudia was. She understood the interactions and she kept in contact with the people. Yeah, like we said about, was this somebody passing through an opportunist crime? No. This crime, this murder, happened between the people and those that frequented the Nag's Head, and 30 or 45 seconds down the road to Claudia's home. Now, we can argue the minutiae of time of disappearance and murder. I am firmly in the camp that after Claudia spoke to her mum and dad, Joan, at different phone calls, different times, Joan and Peter, throughout that night. I think she also spoke to 1 or 2 other friends that evening, and pretty much was willing to call it a night, 8:30, 9 o'clock. I cannot, hand on heart, say that what Claudia reported to her mum and dad that evening, that she was tired, up early in the morning, mum and dad, going to bed now shortly, and that's what she did. I can't, hand on heart, say that that's what she did. I can't say that maybe somebody visited her that evening, or maybe she went back out, but I would be inclined to think if she went back out, she would have went back to the Nag's Head, and there's no report of that, there's no history of that. Or she would have went into closer by, is it York, and would have been picked up on CCTV. So I don't believe that she headed back out that evening. I think she did exactly what she said to her parents. She was heading for an early night. Now, I can't discount that she had an arrangement with somebody that called to her that evening and was in that home with her that evening. I can't discount that. But what I'm fairly sure of is, from the evidence, the dishes in the sink, which I think are reported as breakfast-style dishes. This wasn't dinner dishes earlier in the day, where you put a roast in the, it's dinner day. This was breakfast-style dishes, probably a bowl, cereal, whatever. This was breakfast-style dishes. So my belief is Claudia was alive at 5 a.m. that morning, and nothing untoward had happened to her. Whether somebody was with her that previous evening is open to question, but that she was alive at 5 a.m. and left that house because the rucksack wasn't there, the hair straighteners is not there, the mobile phone, am I right, Brian, is not there as well.
That's gone as well, yeah.
So all the crucial... Now, I know people will say, oh, well, she didn't take a... Well, she ain't going off on holiday, so who takes their passport with them? So she left basic things there, yes, of course. So my belief is, whatever happened, Claudia Lawrence, happened between 5 and 6 a.m. as she attempted that journey to work. Whether she had arrangements to pick her up, or somebody was the previous evening staying with her and she left with that person and headed out with that person, that's when something happened. And we know that she never got to work. And I think it's that 5 to 6 a.m. crucial period is when whatever happened. And it was somebody known to her and somebody that frequented the Nag's Head and knew her. Whether, we don't know enough. I'm not even going to get into motivations, whether it's through previous relationships, jealousy of her, that she was paying more attention to somebody else than another, and that's what inspired whatever happened. But I do believe for this to have happened and for Claudia not to be found now, there has to be a vehicle involved, because you cannot commit this crime without a vehicle. And that's as far as I can go. That's as far as I can, because beyond that I would be just speculating. Beyond that I can't go any further. But I do believe wherever Claudia is, she isn't far outside the York area, wherever that is. And that's all I can say on that, Brian, now.
That's it. Yeah. All right, Mick. Yeah, agreed. So this was local, and I think the good starting point there is the jealousy angle. I think I'd say there was jealousy there, which is particularly there from that guy who said about her having 40 lovers. In one of the quotes that we showed earlier on, and that guy got paid money for giving that to the press, apparently. So I'd say there was jealousy there, all right. But anyway, that's it. So look, I think, and the other open question is whether it was one, made even worse by her being savaged by the press and all of that stuff. So look, all we can say is, look, it's impossible. I think it's almost impossible to conclude that Claudia Lawrence is still alive. So all we can say is, rest in peace, Claudia Lawrence. We sincerely hope that she's found, and that Joan Lawrence gets her daughter back again within her lifetime, and that she, Claudia's sister Ali, and her extended family and friends get the answers they need about what happened to her.
And Brian, could I just say, I think this is important, because look, we appreciate in a case that for police to carry out their investigations, sometimes, regardless of whether they believe somebody is involved or not, but they may have information they are arrested and detained for a period of time. And I want to stress, for legal reasons, some of the people we have named here who are in the public arena and were arrested, we in no way are suggesting they are involved in the disappearance or murder of Claudia Lawrence. We get that, but it's very clear that of the 6 to 9 people who were arrested, they were arrested for a reason. They were arrested because they have information, or they were connected closely to the time and circumstance of Claudia's disappearance. And that's why they were arrested. Someone knows, and someone's not speaking out.
And the police do have to rattle some cages as
and
well.
And police have to react, and that's like, just because somebody's arrested doesn't mean they're being arrested in direct connection with the. Sometimes they're arrested because police believe they're withholding information, or they're conspiring with somebody else as to the disappearance or murder of somebody. So I just want to make that strong point. Look, that doesn't get away from, I still believe that whoever murdered, and I do believe that Claudia Lawrence was murdered, and I do believe it is somebody who frequented, whether regularly or occasionally, knew Claudia, and they're connected, and they may have been previously arrested, or they may not, or they may be associated with somebody who was arrested. I think this is a case of, this investigation is kind of there or thereabouts, but it's still plodding around without real specifics or definitive evidence to actually convict someone. But I think the police have a reasonable idea where this case lies and where it's going.
I think the fear is telling. I mean, people have a very good idea of what happened and who was involved. Like, so it's just
to put it bluntly, as an Irish farmer might say, you know, passing his field, you can smell the shit in this case.
I know. That's it. Like, and say, so folks are going to hope to get answers, and rest in peace, Claudia Lawrence. Hope to get answers. So thanks for tuning in, folks, to this episode of Radio Spoil. Stay safe, look after each other, and we plan to be back with another following week again. And all the best, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah,
God bless. Hopefully a timeline next week, and if not, an insider. But I'm hoping to get the Lisa Doyle case to you next week.
Okay.
Brian, thank you for all your work on this episode. Okay, take care, and we'll see you soon.